Enzo Maresca comes from the school of positional play, clear, intricate playing of the ball from the back, patterns of play, movements of player, slow build-up possession-based football that involves the team moving from the defensive side of the game to the attacking side of the game. And this game is exemplified and personified by Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. Now, in our video today, we are going to look at Pep Guardiola's underbelly and how this underbelly, when exposed in the Premier League, will actually affect Enzo Maresca. We'll look at how Enzo Maresca is more likely to suffer from this problem that Pep Guardiola faced in the Premier League. Now, Enzo Maresca has based his tactical philosophy off Pep Guardiola, and Pep Guardiola's system was actually found out. And I'm going to explain to you how this was done. Enzo Maresca likes his team to be in a 3-2-2-3 structure, something like a 3-2-5 structure during build-up. And this is when a fullback inverts to play alongside a holding midfielder and an aim of trying to create a box-shaped midfield, with forwards dropping in and midfielders making runs from deep. Now, this structure of play actually got found out in the Premier League, and there are two teams which managed to stop Manchester City playing with this structure. Now, Pep Guardiola is regarded as the best football manager in world football. He's a manager who's an innovator, a tactician, but his system got found out last season, though people never realized how this was done. And one manager who came up with the strategy of dealing with Pep Guardiola is Mauricio Pochettino. Now, Mauricio Pochettino, in his two clashes against Pep, especially in the second clash against Guardiola, managed to create a system that actually limited Pep. The same system Pochettino used effectively in the FA Cup. Which system is this? Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. So, Mikel and Pep have used the 3-5 successfully to dominate the Premier League. However, there is a system that Pochettino employed that stopped them. Now, we know very well that Mauricio Pochettino will line up Chelsea in a 4-2-3-1. And you know, Manchester City being a possession-based team, Guardiola will still employ his tactics of using his wingers wide to try and draw the fullbacks out of position, use his centre-backs narrow and higher to try and pull the centre-backs close to them. And the main aim of doing this is to open spaces in the half spaces where he can use his more creative players to occupy these spaces and create 2v1 overloads against the fullback and problems against the centre-back. And because Guardiola's 5-man attack system has been really prolific and very helpful to him, Guardiola likes to try and create a balance between defense and attack. Now, because Rodri cannot cover these spaces alone by himself, what Guardiola has done recently is to actually look to push a centre-back from the back line into the midfield, a role that John Stones has really perfected, and he actually tried to deploy Akanji in this role last season. Now, this will see the widest fullbacks stacking into play as wide centre-backs, and this will give Manchester City power and strength during build-up, because the wide centre-backs will look to attract wingers to the ball, create channels for passing channels in midfield where they will find the holding midfielders. And this box-shaped midfield will actually look to outnumber a midfield 3 or a midfield 2. You can see from this short clip here the position of Manchester City during build-up. You can see the back 3, and look at the position of John Stones, who has pushed from the centre-back position and is now playing in field with Rodri. The position of Ilkay Gundogan and De Bruyne in between lines position is also creating a lot of problems for the opponent, because now Real Madrid is faced with the circumstance on whether to sit back or whether to press, and when they press, the men in the half space receive the ball quite easily. Now, this 3-2 structure really created a lot of problems, and so Manchester City thoroughly destroyed Real Madrid in last year's Champions League race. And this is also what made Manchester City go to become treble winners, because this in a 3-2 structure was very difficult to deal with, especially the box midfield. And so Mauricio Pochettino, upon facing Guardiola at the Etihad, knew he had to come with answers to try and stop this midfield overload that Guardiola likes to create, because having these 4 players in midfield gives Guardiola control and gives Guardiola the control he wants in the game, his ability to dictate the ball, dictate the game with the ball, and also try to dictate the game without the ball. So teams that used a 4-4-2 will easily be outnumbered because the wide centre backs will not be afraid to actually push forward, try to draw in wingers out of position, and try to have their wingers in 1v1 situations with the fullbacks. And because Mauricio Pochettino understood that if he moved in a 4-4-2, then Guardiola would actually destroy him, so Pochettino had to evolve. And in came the 4-2-4. Now, pushing 4 players in the attacking lineup really created problems, and it's something that Carlo Ancelotti also used on Pep in the Champions League clash at the Etihad. You can see the position of Vinicius Jr., Bellingham, Rodrigo, all of them, and Valverde, all of them playing in that narrow front 4. And that narrow front 4 allows Cruz and Camavinga to cover the 2 players in the holding pivots. So the wide wingers could press the wide centre backs and deny them any advancement with the ball higher up the pitch. And this will force Manchester City to play the ball backwards, as the front 2 will be looking to use their cover shadows to deny any central progression to the ball in that midfield region. Now, this 4-2-4 system, when Chelsea employed it at the Etihad, only forced Manchester City to go out wide because all players in midfield had been covered. The likes of De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva could not drop deep to pick the ball because they were both covered by Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. And this is how Manchester City's 3-5 system got found out. The double pivot of Stones and Rodri were also well contained by Chelsea in this game, because Chelsea had Caicedo and Enzo picking them, while Conor Gallagher and Jackson sitting on the other 2. And this also allowed Chelsea's wide wingers to pick the wide centre back. So the likes of Nathan Ake and Walker will not have any time and space on the ball because they will immediately be pressed with the likes of Cole Palmer and Raheem Sterling. And this created a lot of tactical problems for Guardiola, and he saw the frustration in Guardiola's face throughout the game. Now, the only option for Pep was to try and play the ball onto the wide wingers. And if the ball will be played onto the wide wingers, then Chelsea's fullbacks were quite aggressive, and Reece James in particular created a lot of problems for Jeremy Doku, and Doku could not do it. And once Chelsea will win this ball in these wide areas, what you will automatically see is that they will look to transition, because they had many players. They had 4 players against Manchester City's 3 centre-backs, something that Real Madrid also did against Manchester City. And because of this numerical advantage in these kinds of position, Manchester City were unable to stop Real Madrid. Manchester City were unable to stop Chelsea. And this is what has made Manchester City's defense line look quite shaky. So Enzo Maresca, a manager who wants to employ the Pep Guardiola philosophy, is a manager who's more likely to face these same problems that were created against Pep last season. And this will leave Mauricio Pochettino hunting Chelsea next season, because now he gave the other teams the blueprint to play against a Pep system. And if Maresca does not have answers to this, he will face problems. Can you look at how Pochettino did this
setup? So Manchester City looked to build up as usual, with one centre back dropping in field, and that was Manuel Akanji. And what happened is that we saw Manchester City create a pseudo back 4 because Chelsea did not aggressively press high up the pitch, with Ederson stepping out to play as an extra centre back, forming that back 4. And Chelsea were quite conserved in their mid-block press, a very intelligent press where Chelsea lined up in a 4-2-4 system with their wingers playing quite narrow. You can see here the position of Ederson playing as a third centre back, with Ruben Diaz playing as the right centre back, as Manchester City tried to create that numerical advantage in midfield. So, because Pochettino expected Manchester City to try to play through the middle, he made sure that he crowded the center of the pitch, denying Manchester City any time and space in the middle, with Gallagher and Jackson being deployed to tie up the double pivots, where Gallagher would apply pressure using his cover shadow to try and cover Rodri. So when the ball would spring out wide, this will preempt Cole Palmer or Raheem Sterling to immediately latch on to either Nathan Ake or Kyle Walker, during the build-up system, and this was quite an interesting move by Chelsea. So this would ensure that Manchester City are forced to play wide, where Chelsea would engage in an aggressive touchline press and look to try to win the ball. Now, Manchester City would bypass the first line of pressure in this case, and Chelsea will sit into a mid defensive block, and this will prompt Manchester City to form their back three system. This back three system was aided with the three center backs, and Chelsea created a compact block 4-4-2 block that denied the likes of De Bruyne any chance in space in between the lines, allowing Manchester City only space down the wide areas. So because Chelsea had created this shield in front of goal, this really stopped Manchester City from playing through the middle. And Chelsea's front line, who tied up the double pivots and looked to press the centre backs in possession, denying them time and on the ball, would see wingers pushing from the midfield region to press Manchester City's wide centre backs, denying them any space to try to progress the ball through the wide areas. You can see how aggressive Chelsea are in their press. Jackson is on Diaz, Sterling is covering both Akanji and Kyle Walker, while Gallagher is pushing towards Rodri with Cole Palmer on Nathan Ake. Now, Chelsea were relying heavily on 1v1, and sometimes in this game, Akanji was the only one allowed to have the ball. And why was Akanji allowed to have the ball? Because Akanji is not quite adventurous as John Stones, and even if he received the ball, he did not look to try and play those penetrative passes in the wide areas or in the channels. So even here, when Akanji received the ball, he would immediately get pressed by Raheem Sterling, and this would force him to play the ball backwards. As you see, De Bruyne is making that run to try and receive the ball in space and try to attack Chelsea's backline. Now, down the right, it was quite interesting, since when Foden received the ball, he will draw Ben Chilwell out of position, with De Bruyne looking to make that half space run. But credit needs to go to Chelsea's center midfielders, especially Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez played quite well, tracking these runs of De Bruyne, though sometimes De Bruyne managed to make these runs, with Enzo failing to pick him up, giving Chelsea tons and tons of problems, especially trying to deal with the runs of Kevin De Bruyne. Now, down the right hand side, it was also quite interesting. So since Ake would receive the ball and immediately play the pass to Doku majority of the times will have a 1v1 against Gusto, and credit must go to Gusto. Gusto managed to hold Doku quite a lot, and this is also not to underestimate the impressive work that Cole Palmer did. So we know that Alvarez also wanted to make these half space runs, but Cole Palmer will ensure that he shifts across to double up on Jeremy Doku, and Cole Palmer will, and now Alvarez will receive the ball but only have to pass the ball backwards, because he was not able to receive that ball in the half space. You can see here, Doku has received the ball, he's dragged the fullback out of position, and now Julian Alvarez is attempting to make that run in the box, even when Alvarez decided to make this run. Now, this was really problematic, and even sometimes what we started to see is Kevin De Bruyne actually shifting towards the left, where he will shift towards the left in this kind of space, attempt to receive the ball in these kinds of areas. And once he received the ball in these kinds of areas, he will try that in swing across, especially to try to play in Haaland. You can see here De Bruyne has shifted from his right half space position, it's moving towards the left so that he can receive the ball directly from the center back. So he attempted this process, and Disasi was quite impressive in the air, but at sometimes Haaland will manage to win this battle. But luckily for Chelsea is that Haaland was not quite on form that day, and if he did score this goal, it would mean that Chelsea would actually have lost this game. Now, on the right hand side, it was also quite interesting, especially towards the second half. And the second half, we saw Alvarez coming off and Bernardo Silva